Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Joe Dellera, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andrew O'Connor Watts. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Doing well, man. The madness has begun.
Dude, we got a pretty gross NBA slate today. I feel like they knew what they were doing when they put this slate together. They're like, you know what? The real sickos are going to be the ones betting NBA, and that's what kind of what they decided to do with this selection of games. And obviously, we had a little bit of a situation here where the Lakers wound up ruling out a ton of players, and that's kind of part of the problems with March, right? And when you get into March, it does have a little bit of madness to it, even in the NBA. So Andrew, what is your take on the way the teams are kind of managing their rosters, managing their expectations right now? What are you thinking about when you're going into a slate?
I'm thinking about how teams perform with or without certain players. What are teams' motivations? What where like how can we find value even given that information? Spoiler alert, I have a couple pretty gross plays that I think makes sense even with all the craziness that we have going on with these injuries. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're thinking about things still in a way that is logical, or at least is based on what you're observing these teams' behaviors. And most importantly, I think not overextending yourself, because there is a lot more uncertainty here, but still value to be had, I think, if you're looking closely enough.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of opportunity to try to read through some of the injury reports and try to get ahead of some of the news, right? Like today, for example, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show, but one of the plays that I liked was Karl Anthony Towns. I liked him over his PRA line. Whether or not it's going to hit, different question. I think it's going to hit, but that's not really the point of this.
I
But
do too.
like Mitchell Robinson it's a back-to-back for the Knicks. He's just coming back from injury. The only other back-to-back opportunity he sat in one of the games. So we had a back-to-back today. I was like, there's just no way he's going to play. He's not going to play in the spot. Yeah. It's going to be a better opportunity for Cat to grab some rebounds. And I felt like this was going to just open up some more minutes with him playing a more natural five as opposed to playing a little bit at the four. They're playing at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So there are ways, I think, especially now, where you kind of not only do you know what teams are doing overall, and you've been able to see it for the course of the entire season, but you're also able to kind of look and say, well, what are the motivations here? So looking at like a game like tonight, right, where you have a team like the Raptors, they're playing the Warriors, and the Raptors are clearly in tank mode. Yesterday or 2 days ago, you had the Wizards versus the Jazz. Literally one of the most disgusting games you could possibly have. Neither team wanted to win. And it creates a lot of variance in the market. It creates a lot of variability in some of your options. And those are just some of the things that you can kind of keep your eye on moving forward. But when you're looking at this and you're looking at teams that are, maybe looking at player development, they're focusing a little bit more on the future. What do you try to do, or how do you try to interpret some of that? And does it matter against certain teams? Like if you're playing like tonight, the Raptors are playing the Warriors, or like let's say the Jazz are playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, are you as worried about it in that matchup because the other team is so much better? They're really outclassing them, just regardless of the situation.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as concerned when it is that discrepancy, like Jazz versus OKC. But I mean, one thing that we have talked about on this show is the Jazz's rest player development patterns, right? Like how they will basically play their good guys against these teams that they know they'll lose against anyways, like the Thunder or the Cavs or whoever. So if you want to, that's a good instance of how you can kind of get ahead of the injury stuff. I think I've also talked about this as well. When you see somebody go from kind of out of the blue day of to a new designation, you can I've gotten to a point where I feel pretty confident betting on whatever direction that's going. So for instance, if there's someone just going from nothing to questionable day of, they're not playing, right?
Yeah.
Someone going from someone going from playing to questionable, right? Playing.
Yeah.
Someone going from been on the injury report for 2 months. Now all of a sudden they're questionable day of. They're probably playing. Like these teams don't really like they're not just gonna announce people out of the blue, like so they do these kind of like half measures. So those are kind of things that you can kind of pick up on day of stuff. But like I said, noticing these patterns with like the Jazz, how their tanking strategy. With the Raptors, they're just kind of they're just sitting guys one game, playing them another. They're kind of doing like musical chairs of who's playing. So noticing like who you think who is going to be able to who is going to play and how that affects the certain matchups of that day. That's another way that you can kind of find this value on a day-to-day basis in March.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I want to come back to that idea in a minute. But the other big news that we had in the NBA was the Boston Celtics were sold for $6.1 billion. That is now the number one figure across all of American sports. They beat out the Washington Commanders by about, I guess it was like $500,000 or $1 million essentially. And it the numbers get big there. Like the numbers get a little bigger there. I'm not used to
that. $500,000.
Yeah, we're looking at like 5.7 on a projection for assists, not billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So obviously this was actually one of the more interesting things that was expected at some point in the over the next coming seasons, right? Where the Boston ownership group had made it known that the Boston Celtics were for sale. It also was something that was going to be essentially the first domino before an expansion franchise, because there was an expectation that the sale of the Boston Celtics was going to be the number one, like biggest number that you could possibly have out of any team in the NBA right now that was at least for sale. It would obviously eclipse what the Mavericks took. It's definitely eclipsing the Minnesota Timberwolves number. That looks like an incredible deal right now, and that's probably part of why the owner wants to get out of it. But so there's a couple things there, right? But this kind of opens the door for maybe a Vegas franchise in the next couple of seasons once this sale is finalized. When you look at this and you look at some of the turmoil that often can come with new ownership, and even if you look at the Dallas Mavericks, right? Mark Cuban, who had been the primary owner of the Dallas Mavericks, had made it abundantly clear that he would. I think the quote was, "If I had to choose between Luka Doncic and my wife, I'd be handing her divorce papers." Like that was. And then now obviously new ownership and they trade Luka. So it really can change the trajectory of a franchise. Now you have this team like the Boston Celtics. I think part of what happened here is the ownership group that's currently in place. They knew that they were going to sell. They also know right now that they have an excellent championship window, right? And what they did was they paid everybody. Like everybody's getting their money, right? And a lot of these supermax contracts are not even kicking in yet. They still have another year or two before they even kick in. So they never really had to foot the bill, but they got to keep all the players happy. Looking forward with this Boston Celtics team, obviously, we're not totally sure what's going to happen this year. We don't know what's going to happen next season. Do you see a world where this new ownership group comes in, they spent all this money on the team, and you look at the roster that's getting, maybe a little bit older, a little bit, maybe there's an injury or something that pops up. What do you think that they might break up that team? With, I think a couple guys might retire, but do you think that they break up the Jays?
I mean, after Luka Doncic got traded, that just opened up the door for anybody. And now that they've actually, sold the team, like you said, and ownership is changing hands, yeah, I think it's way more likely now than it was yesterday, right? I was kind of surprised that the deal got done as quickly. Well,
Same.
That we already have a buyer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they announced it like a month after the finals or something, like maybe even
Yeah.
less. But that's not even a year. I mean, it was like what, 10 months ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, very surprised by that. You make a great point with the super maxes and, kind of getting everybody locked up for the foreseeable future. But I think new owners in general are just very volatile, right? Like you never know what you're getting. And I don't really know anything about this new group coming in. So can't really speak to them specifically.
Yeah.
But what I, yeah, go.
No, I was saying I didn't dive into the ownership group
Yeah,
itself, but just kind of a thought.
right. Just as like, but I mean, in terms of, the concept of a new owner, I think that absolutely, like, I think Bill Simmons talks about the idea of like new owner syndrome, where people come in and try to like, you know switch things up just because like, all right, it's a new sheriff in town kind of thing.
Literally.
Even if you had a good thing going. So I think it, again, kind of like what we're talking about with the injury report, like if you see something go from 0 to something, that could be an indication. Like maybe maybe they trade like Sam Hauser away for something, and you're like, huh, okay, weird. Okay, don't totally get that move. Like, that's kind of where I would be a little more like, oh shoot, this could be like, representative of something else to come that maybe is a little more drastic, a little more game changing, like
Yeah.
the Jays. Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely is going to be something to monitor. I think that some of the this is like a real tangible story, and I think we all can get caught up in some of the the trade rumor things, and just saying like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy could go for this guy or whatever, right?
Well,
But at the same time, this happened. This is a real
yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and this is we've now seen it with multiple times now with new ownership. If you look at the Mavericks, if you look at the
Suns.
Timberwolves, the Suns,
Dude, Ishbia,
um,
yeah.
just a variety of different situations where teams are shedding assets or acquiring players at the cost of the future, and you have to kind of adjust for that. So, going to be interesting to see. Definitely going to be a story to monitor. But let's dive into the slate tonight. And the first game that we have is obviously we got to talk about the Knicks. We always have to talk about the Knicks.
Yes.
So we've got the New York Knicks versus the Charlotte Hornets, and my best bet for the game, we have the Knicks as 7.5-point favorites. There's a lot of red on the screen, a lot of against the spread bad for both the Knicks and the Hornets, which kind of checks out. I guess the Hornets just suck, and then the Knicks are a popular team to bet on, so it does kind of create that situation. But I like Karl Anthony Towns to go over 40.5 PRA in the spot. It's a matchup against this Hornets team, and the Knicks just had a bad loss against the San Antonio Spurs. My thought originally, like I mentioned earlier in the show, was that Mitchell Robinson, at the time I originally put the bet in, had not been ruled out yet. I thought he was going to be out. Without Robinson, I think we're going to see Cat play a lot more minutes at the 5. He's going to have more rebounding opportunities. And if you flip it on the other side, when you look at what the Hornets are putting out there, you've got Mark Williams, a little bit more of a traditional big, not somebody that's going to space the floor. So it's somebody that's going to keep Cat a little bit closer to the paint. And I also, Mark Williams is a guy that can get in foul trouble himself, which could only help Cat a little bit. And Williams does tend to get a lot of lobs. So those are not necessarily the same shots that you're going to get free throws on. I don't think it's going to force Cat to be in a foul trouble situation. And when you couple this with Jalen Brunson being out, he's going to obviously still have to carry a little bit more of that offensive load in what I think is a strong matchup. So it's been a pretty soft matchup for centers overall. They just got cooked by Zubac, Jokic, and Jalen Duren. Obviously all great centers, but I think Cat can definitely put up a big number here against the Charlotte Hornets, despite your bet on this game, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the under here. 222 is the number that I believe is still out there. That's the number I got and bet it at. Part of this is just kind of a fade of the Hornets offense, and then kind of a fade of the Knicks offense without Brunson, honestly. So while I would prefer Mitch in for the actual defense of the Knicks, it doesn't really bother me that he's not in against a team like the Hornets. Like the Hornets are terrible. I mean, so if we just look at without Brunson, because that's part of the aspect of it, right? Is they're averaging 111.8 points per game. So that's been against, some okay, not great opponents. So, they've played, let's see, in the last couple games. I mean, we've seen them play Sac. We've seen them play Miami. I mean, Miami's, just kind of a slow, sloggy team. They kind of only play defense, no offense. But I'm more kind of was looking at the situation as well, right? Knicks are on a back-to-back, playing their third and fourth night, fourth game in 6. And teams in their situation have been pretty, this has been a good profitable under situation. And it actually kind of fits with Mitch being out, because the system that I'm kind of going off of, as well, in addition to my actual projections that I use, the system that I'm going off of is basically when a road team that has a bad defense, which the Knicks do, especially without Robinson, but they're on a tired, but they're on the 3rd and 4 back-to-back situation. The under is 47, 35, and 1 this season. So that's 57% hit rate against the spread. I just think that the Hornets aren't going to be able to score. Knicks aren't going to be able to score as much as the market is assuming. And I think 222 is just a little bit too high. If they had Brunson, might be a different story. But given that there's no Brunson, given that the Hornets are ass, I'll take under 222.
No, I like it. And I see that we have a question here about Josh Hart, 10 plus boards. I like it. There's some 8.5s in the market. And I think this is kind of an interesting point to bring up, right? So one of the things that I think is important when you're doing some of the line shopping, right, is sometimes you can have, like right now, if I'm looking at the odds screen, and there's a 9.5 at plus 114 at DraftKings right now, and then there's an over 8.5 at minus 145. When you look at these two things, a lot of times people will consider this and you say, well, like the 8.5 is a better number. Like you're getting it at one stat lower. And well, I think that matters like sometimes, right? In terms of your range of outcomes here, for me, based on, what our projections have this at, is that the 9.5 at the plus money is actually presenting better value. And it has about a 10% edge versus a 5% edge. So a lot of times people will look at things and they'll go, oh, well, like this has good value because it's a lower line. And I get that you get the additional out, but you're paying for it. And that's something that you always have to remember when you're playing these player props. So a lot of times when like people like to use the term watering down, and I think it's a bad term, because you're not really like you're watering it down with juice, I guess, right? Like you have to then be hitting that line at least the same rate, like a relative rate in terms of the implied probability for it to make sense. And even then you're either risking more to win the same, or you're risking the same and you're going to win less. So I think it's just something that you need to consider with some of these bets and some of these options. Do you have any thoughts on juice betting, Andrew? Because I know when you're betting sides and totals, like sometimes it can be just a 5-cent difference, and it does make a world of difference for the bettor.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's better with or different with props, than it is for sides and totals, because like certain players can have a like you said, a certain floor or a certain ceiling to their production, and I don't necessarily want certain players. I'll buy out of an extra point on the line if it's a certain player that I don't think has super high upside but a very high floor. Whereas Josh Hart is one of those guys that, especially with a big out, he could just go nuts. So yeah. I think he's definitely a person that you want almost to take the sell a point for some value. I mean, if you look at his like recent rebounding too, it's like, the misses on this number are like 7, 7, 6, 8, 7, 4, 8. So a few 8s in there, which I guess it was 8.5, right?
There's 8.5 at minus 145. So
he hasn't. You're not really 9 since like 2 months ago.
Exactly. So it's just he's just going over it, and I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of times when you're taking smaller numbers, like like a steal, like, or like a half a steal, or, you know,
Yep.
like 1.5 assists. The jump from 1.5 assists to 2.5 assists is much more significant than the jump from, say, like 24 to 25 points.
Yeah.
So, and it's way out of whack if you're betting like a total, for example. The difference between,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
222.5 and 223.5 is not even in the same ballpark as, an assist prop moving by one. So
Yeah.
let's get into the next game real quick before before it hits tip.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've got the Brooklyn Nets versus the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are 8.5 point favorites right now. And what we're looking at here is a game where Halliburton is not going to be playing for Indiana. He's missed a number of games of late. Andrew, what do you think about Indiana? What do you think about this Brooklyn Nets team who should be tanking, but here we are?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, look at all that green on the Nets side. I just want you to notice that.
Yeah.
I promised a couple gross plays now that we're in tankathon March. Because I'm taking the Nets. I'm taking the road dog here with the points, because what we have here is two kind of opposite against the spread teams. You mentioned Halliburton being out, right? Pacers have been solid the last 10 games, 6-4 straight up, but just 1-7 against the spread. And with Halliburton out, they're 2-4 straight up and 1-5 against the spread. They really, really have benefited from his presence this season, even though he kind of had a slow start to the season. He's really the guy that drives that offense and is the engine there. Even though they have a pretty deep team, TJ McConnell's a great backup. It's just not the same when Halliburton's not there as that scoring threat from outside, inside, kind of distributing the ball. Really, it's like his playmaking, I think, that gets the most value. So they're going to miss him. But look, the Nets, you're right. The Nets are tanking. They're an absolute garbage fire right now. No cams, right?
No cams.
No cams, which I want cams in there. Sure. But they still got D'Lo. They got Claxton in there. The Nets are 2-8 straight up in their last 10. So they are tanking, right? That's a good job. Good job tanking. 2-8. But they're 6-2 against the spread in their last 8. They've been playing like some close games, and they have a pretty big rest advantage against the Pacers here, who are on a back-to-back, playing their third game and fourth night, 4th and 6th, and 5th and 7th. So they've literally all they've been doing is going to bed, waking up, playing basketball, going to bed, waking up, playing basketball. And NBA basketball at that. So, yeah, it's gross, but this is where you kind of find the value in March, is these bad rest spots. Teams are tired. They're kind of going through the motions at this point. The Nets can still lose this and by a decent, couple possessions and still cover the spread. They're one of the best teams at doing that. Jordy Fernandez has been awesome for them. They're 37-31-1 against the spread. 19-12-1 as a road dog, and 12-7 as with a rest advantage, where the Pacers are, again, the opposite of that. 2-9 on back-to-backs against the spread, 7-12 with a rest disadvantage. And they're also, they love playing down to their competition. 17-1 against the spread against teams that are less than 400. So I think this is an awesome spot for the Nets, as much as you can actually say that with a straight face without feeling terrified. So
no, I like that spot, and you can grab the Nets at +8.5. So let's look at the next game we have on the slate tonight, and we are looking at not sure. Let's see which one Alex pulling up next. We got a couple 10 o'clock games. So I do think that we've got the Warriors versus the Raptors, and the Warriors big favorites, 14-point favorites. Raptors have been kind of cooking against the spread lately, Andrew.
A lot of green.
Are you buying in on that? Because the Warriors have looked great with Jimmy Butler, but are you going to buy in on the Raptors right now?
I'm doing it. No, this gross play number 2. You could argue number 3 actually with an under in a Knicks game, but give me 14.5 points. I mean, that's a ton of points. That's 2 touchdowns, Joe. I know it's not football season anymore, but 14.5 is a lot. I have 2 Rithmm models that are on it that have been crushing against the spread this season. Again, 2 opposite ATS profiles. The Warriors have been awesome with Jimmy, 15-3 straight up, but just 2-4-1 against the spread in their last 10 game. In their last, how many games is that? 7 games, right?
Yeah.
And the last few spreads that they've failed in that are 12.5, 7, 12. They pushed on a 5, 11.5. They've only covered one double-digit spread in the last 15 or so games. But whereas, like you said, you saw that, Green, in the previous slide. Raptors have been cooking. They have, they've been kind of doing that do-si-do. One guy's in, Pirtle's out. Pirtle is in tonight. RJ is out, but we have Quickly, we have Pirtle, we have Scotty. Those are kind of the 3 guys that or 4 guys, but we have 3 of 4 tonight that I'm most concerned about, and we have them all. So, Raptors are 7-2 in their last 9 against the spread. This is their 3rd straight road game, so not perfectly ideal, but they haven't played since St. Patty's Day. So plenty of time to sleep off the hangover, get a little rest. The Guinness and the whiskeys are probably long out of their system by now. If you bet the Raptors blindly in every game this season, you'd be a profitable man. You might not be able to afford the Celtics, but you'd be 41-27-1. That's their record against the spread. Only the Cavs and the Thunder are better. I'll take the Raptors on the road. Let's do it. Bring it on.
I think it's a great spot here as well. And the thing about the Raptors is they had honestly been sitting everybody in the fourth quarter. So this is interesting, what Hayden's kind of saying here, because I think in large part they've been doing this because they've been playing games that they can kind of win. And they've been playing some more like competition that's realistically at their level. So if we look at the Raptors' last couple games, right? The Raptors have played the Suns, who they just got whipped by. They played the Blazers in a close game. They played the Jazz, that is a game they probably wanted to lose. The Sixers in a game they probably wanted to lose. The Wizards in a game they probably wanted to lose. So a lot of these teams that they played recently, I think, have been, kind of closer to their class. I think they've been in situations where they, kind of want to lose. If you look at this game against the Warriors, to me, I think that you're right. Like if the Raptors are within 10, maybe Barnes doesn't play. But at the same time, even if Barnes does play, I'm not convinced that they could win this game necessarily anyway. I do think that this is a spot where you're getting a ton of points. You're not really asking for them to win. You're just asking them to keep it, sort of within the blowout range, right?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty important there.
Yeah, and it's real quick about that. That's a great point about the fourth quarter being a little wonky. Even with that, though, the Raptors in their last 9 games are 6-3 to the second half spread. So they're still like hanging in there. Again, I do think you bring a good point of like they've been playing kind of like similar competition, whereas they did get cooked by the Suns. I think, if you want to, I don't mind like live betting the Warriors if it's close and like trying to middle this, but 14.5. Yeah, it's just too much for March basketball, as much as the Raptors don't want to win. It's a massive, massive number. So
yeah, I'm with you on that. So let's dive into the next game on the slate. We've got a couple more games left. Nothing super crazy, except for we got one of the craziest injury reports in the league right now with the Bucks versus the Lakers. So the Bucks are 7.5-point favorites. This line keeps bopping around. Both of these teams have been great against the spread lately, but for the Lakers, we have a number of injuries, and it's quite the laundry list. I'm a little disappointed because personally, I was on Luka early. Yeah. Then Luka gets rolled out, and I grab some great stuff on Reeves. Then Reeves gets rolled out, and I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. What do you think about this game? Because we don't have Luka, we don't have Rui, we don't have LeBron, we don't have Austin Reeves. Jared Vanderbilt's doubtful, and then if you look at the Bucks side, Giannis is probable. They've downgraded Damian Lillard, which I think is interesting, and this is coming off of a team meeting. And by team, I mean Giannis, Dame, and Doc Rivers just had a meeting about trying to optimize this team and progress forward. Do you have any thoughts on this game overall?
So Reeves out. correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Luka out. Everyone's out. So team total under for the Lakers, like alt under. I'm gonna be looking at like Bucks, but I don't think. I mean, Dame. Why would Dame play other than maybe like the team meeting thing? But um, Bucks by like alt spread, Bucks by 20. Like, I mean, this is maybe one of those where you want to just go like crazy alts on the Bucks, fading. I don't know where the offense is going to come from the the Lakers. Maybe under on Jackson Hayes points because he kind of only gets. He only kind of gets. I haven't looked at it, but he gets a lot of love from Luca and Reeves and Braun from like those lobs. So
Yeah.
I would look to kind of those type of unders, maybe an under for team total, and then like alts for the Bucks because this could be a get out of hand.
Yeah, I do know a lot of people in my Discord were talking about Shake Milton, Alex talking about Shake Milton, Jordan Goodwin. This is kind of a little bit of a gross game here.
Yeah.
My issue is that I don't totally know what the Lakers' motivation is here. I'd imagine Bronny's going to get a little bit of run tonight. I actually think this is still a good spot for Dalton Connect. I know that this is a big role that he needs to fill, but he's also a player that I think the Bucks kind of would struggle to defend. Like, they don't really have anybody that's designed to defend him, right? He's not somebody that you're going to put Giannis on and just deploy Giannis on him. He is somebody that can pull up from three. He can create his own shot. We know he's got a ton of experience. Obviously, he played a ton in college. He's getting a lot of run this year in the NBA. I think if you were going to go with a Dalton Connect prop, I would be looking at PRA. There's a 28.5 PRA out there at minus 115, and I really don't mind it against this Milwaukee team. I think that the number is obviously sky high. It's so high, but at the same time, he's been pretty solid of late anyway. He's putting up a bunch of points, he's getting some boards, he's getting some assists, and I think that if he's given the reins here, he's going to see a little bit more opportunity to kind of get everything going for the Lakers here. And I think that if you like Dalton today, there's no reason that you couldn't take a little bit of a ladder opportunity and say, like, all right, well, this sets up for him to just get as much run as he possibly can, because that's what the Lakers want. They want to develop him more. And this is a way for him to lead an offense, run the offense for a little bit, for a couple minutes at a time. And I think that that's kind of important for what this team wants to do, at least now, and maybe moving forward a little bit too.
Yeah. Hayden in there with the 45 alt PRA. I love that.
That is some sick. That is some sick shit.
Sick shit. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, but that's the kind of sick shit we're here for with March NBA, man.
Yeah, and I do like your point. I do like your point about Jackson Hayes. I think that a lot of projections are going to have him going over today because of the minutes increase, the expected usage increase. But the problem is, like you said, a lot of the usage that he gets is almost like fabricated from all the lobs that he gets from LeBron, Luca, and Austin Reeves. So without them, I question that to a degree. And then let's turn to the final game on the slate tonight. Thin slate. We got the Bulls versus the Kings. So the Bulls versus the former Bulls. And look, the Kings are 7-point favorites. Both of these teams, again, have been solid against the spread. 7-3 for both. And when you look at this spot, does anything pop out to you? The one thing that popped out to me was I was looking at Vooch over 27.5 PRA. He's had great history against Valanciunas. I'm a little concerned about the fact that it's a back-to-back for Chicago, but and he kind of burned me a little bit yesterday. I had him to get a double-double, but I think the scoring should be there. The rebounds have been there against Valanciunas, and so have the assists, actually, in these head-to-head matchups. So it's a matchup that I think he's comfortable in. He's familiar with the matchup, and I like the over 27.5 PRA. Is there anything that kind of stood out to you in this game? Obviously, Levine is playing the Bulls for the first time here. I was looking at his props, but I feel like they're a little bit inflated in like a quote unquote revenge game.
Yeah, I think people really like betting these revenge games. And I just I want to see the data on him, because like I think it's really case by case with these players. Like, I think, someone like, we know LeBron loves playing in Cleveland, in the Garden. Like, there's certain things that we just know he talks about it, right?
Yeah.
But other guys, it's like, you know what I mean? We like making the joke of like, Mario Hezonja comes back and it's like to the Blazers, like Mario Hezonja revenge game. It's like, where do we stop? Where does it stop? Right?
Yeah.
Like, who gives a shit? So he might have revenge, but I don't know if he's able to accumulate the shot making. I don't know. LaVine is definitely obviously a much better player than Mario Hezonja. No offense to Zach LaVine there, but I don't know. I think that usually these revenge game spots can be instances where you almost want to look at an under or nothing, just because, like, kind of fade the inflation a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. So, because I wanted to bet it. I was like, this is a fun spot. It definitely is a pace up spot against the Chicago Bulls, but I just couldn't really get there on the number. I mean, I bet LaVine the other day, and we were looking at like a 20.5 or a 20 plus prop, and now we're up to like 24.5. So yeah. I couldn't really get there for it. It just was a little bit too high for me. But do you have any parting thoughts on this? I know that DraftKings obviously had the king of the court the other night. I thought we were set last night. I had Luka Doncic, which I know is super chalky, but I love the spot. And then he sat the entire fourth quarter. Deni Avdija, he wins king of the court, the most PRA. Andrew's bringing it up in the chat here. $1,300 in free bets. Honestly, I thought it was going to be more. So little shocking with that. I will say with this promo, and it's one of the things I do in my Discord anyways, I send out the projections for it, right? But I'm not telling people who to use their thing on. I'm trying to give you some framework to work off of, because it's essentially like pari-mutuel betting. For all those guys that like ponies, I like ponies. You're betting against yourself. Like, you're betting against other people. Like, if if a million people all put in on, like, say, Luka or Deni, whatever, you're gonna get a $1 free bet. So that's not what you want. You want to try to optimize the situation. You want to try to get like somebody that's a little bit different. Sometimes maybe, like, obviously sometimes the chalk is going to win, but a lot of times if you pick somebody that's totally random, then, that we wouldn't project to normally win, like a guy like Deni Avdija, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you steam steam that market with a ton of people flooding it saying, like, this is our pick for today, because it's awesome for everybody to win. But it's like the whole point of taking the long shot is so that it has the payout of a long shot, not the payout of somebody like a Brunson. When Brunson won the other, like a couple months ago, he was like $500. So how is Deni Avdija, who you'd like never project to be the king of the court, how does he only have, say, 1,300? It can be because there's a suggestion made to bet that and pick him, and then it's like, well, that you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Like, it's not beneficial for you. So that's one of the things to kind of remember with that. The threes promo that FanDuel runs, et cetera, et cetera. But Andrew, do you have any other thoughts before we get everybody out of here?
No, I think that's it. That's good for me, man.
All right, so we'll recap the best bets real quick. I like Karl Anthony Towns over 40.5 PRA. You like the under 222 in Knicks versus Hornets. For Bucks Lakers, we were kind of looking at Dalton Connect over the PRA 28.5. For Nets Pacers, Nets plus 8.5. And for Raptors Warriors, Raptors plus 14.5. And for Bulls versus Kings, looking at Vooch over 27.5 PRA. And Andrew, I see you got a finger up.
One last thing I wanted to say about the Raptors. I'm sprinkling a little teeny tiny bit on the money line, because the 3 losses that the Warriors have had, Philly, Dallas, and I believe the Wizards, I can't remember the last one, but 3 really bad teams. So this is actually kind of a sneaky spot where I think the Warriors could just lose straight up. Don't put your life savings on it, but like, I'm talking like literally like $4 to win, $35, whatever I don't know what your unit size is, but
yeah,
very small amount to win way more amount.
We won't unit shame here. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, but no, that's a great point. Sometimes it's always worth sprinkling the money line just a little bit on some of those big dogs. But no, so it's been a great show. We will definitely see you guys next week. By the way, my Rithmm bracket is actually crushing right now. I've hit 7 of 8 so far that have come out. I did it like the other week. I requested my bracket, and we're crushing right now. So very happy with that. And be sure to sign up. You can get a free week trial in like the bio through Rithmm, through me, through Andrew. Hit us up if you need the code. If you can't find it, we'll be sure to get that to you so you can have player props and sides totals for all of your betting needs here. So for Andrew O'Connor Watts, I'm Joe Dellera, and let's continue to cash that.